On Friday, January 2nd, the U.S. military and Department of Justice launched a daring raid into the heart of Venezuela. More than 150 aircraft, dozens of bombs, and the world's top special operations force converged on the compound of the country's leader. Delta Force operators landed just before 2 a.m. and were back within 2 hours, with now former President Nicolas Maduro cuffed and blindfolded safely aboard the USS Iwo Jima. Operation Absolute Resolve was an absolute success. Reaction from around the world about the legality of the operation has been mixed, but for Venezuelans, the story is different. I'm Nick Reagan, and in this Live 5 deep dive, we are digging into the nuances of what the capture of Maduro means for Venezuelans both abroad and right here in Charleston. I think one of the things that people don't quite realize about Live 5 is just how sort of deep our reporter bench is. We've got a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different cultures, and we have 4 or 5 people in the newsroom that speak either fluent or close to fluent Spanish, which gives us a real leg up when big things happen internationally and we need to go into these communities and get the reaction, talk to the people. I've got a couple of our reporters here, Maitane, Tiana, both of you guys speak Spanish, and both of you guys have been sort of instrumental in helping us better understand what's happening in Venezuela, and quite frankly, from the perspective of not just the Spanish-speaking community here, but also the Venezuelan community, because as I've learned in the last couple of days, is we have a lot more Venezuelans here than I thought. Now, Maitane, this is actually kind of personal for you because you have some real connections to the country. Can you talk just a little bit about your personal connection to Venezuela?
Yeah, so my cousins, 5 of them actually, are born in Venezuela. 2 of them are married to Venezuelan women. They moved to Spain. My uncle and aunt are also Venezuelan. They moved to Spain. My other uncle stayed in Venezuela, and his 3 sons are still in Venezuela with his wife too. So some of them moved because of obviously what's been going on in Venezuela for these many years, but some of them have stayed.
But when you saw all this news breaking over the weekend, I mean, what did sort of the text chats look like between you and your family members?
Everyone was really happy. Obviously, at first, we get a video from my uncle who lives there of the bomb that, hit. Everyone was kind of like, wait, what's going on? And then everyone's like, they captured Maduro, but there was no proof. And as a journalist, I was like, let's wait till we have an actual picture showing that they actually captured him. Everyone was really happy. I actually don't know one Venezuelan that I know that's not happy about the capture of Maduro. But over the days, the language the chat, the motion has changed. Because I think, everyone was like, Venezuela's free. But were they really free? Is my question, because it goes deeper than just capturing a dictator.
Well, let's come back to that nuance in a moment, because I think that has been the message kind of spot on. Is everybody sort of reacted and said we're glad that Maduro's gone, and now a couple days later we're still digesting it and we're wondering sort of what comes next. Now, Tiana, you actually went out. We sent you out on Monday. We said, hey, go talk to some Venezuelans because you also speak Spanish. And you did that. What did you find?
Well, actually, I would say the reactions that I found from people were very similarly to what Maitane already expressed over the weekend with her family. So I went out and got 2 different interviews with Venezuelans, of course. One, he is co-owner, I should say, of a food truck, of an empanada food truck. Other one, he's a Facebook admin of the Venezolanos in Charleston, or Venezuelans in Charleston Facebook group. So, of course, he kind of puts out motion of, things that are happening in Charleston in Spanish for Venezuelans in the area to know about. And essentially, their reactions were very similar. They were very happy that this capture has happened over the weekend, especially on Saturday. And Saturday seemed to be a very prominent day as well, because one of them actually found out at 2:30 in the morning, he said, from his mom. And he said he did not go back to sleep. He was up the whole night. And same experience with the owner of the food truck. Him and his daughter and his wife and everyone like that, they found out through social media, but very early on in that morning. But a very key word was hope. They were very hopeful of the country's future at this point, but they were uncertain. So that hope, I mean, is it short-lived? We don't know yet because things are very uncertain, but that's essentially what the reaction was. And I do want to also point out that we had some protests this past weekend as well. I also asked about that too, Nick. And I asked, as a Venezuelan, how did you feel about these protests that were happening over the weekend? The Venezuelan man that I spoke to, who's the admin of the Facebook group, he actually told me that he wishes these protesters would actually speak to real Venezuelans. I think a common theme was a lot of these people that were at these protests are not from that country or have any ties to it. And so he urged a lot of people that were protesting to speak to Venezuelans, find out how they're feeling and things like that.
When you, Tiana, were talking to these folks, you were finding these folks, first of all, I just want to sort of put this, this cultural sort of shell around myself for a moment, because I didn't even know that we had a Venezuelans in Charleston Facebook group. I had no idea that there were really Venezuelans here, maybe one or two. I mean, I know we have a Spanish community, but it was interesting to me to hear you talk about this Venezuelan Facebook group and the fact that we are able to contextualize something that's happening, around the world right here in Charleston is amazing. But when you talked to them, you mentioned that they were happy that Maduro was gone. But what was the actual conversations like? I mean, were they ecstatic, or was it kind of like a calm, sort of a hopeful, cautious optimism from them?
Well, actually, so the owner of the empanada food truck, him and his daughter were very excited. Like, you could see it in their tone of voice that they were very happy that this had happened. The admin of the Facebook group, he very much so expressed that he was happy about what had happened. He didn't come off as, or I guess the tone of voice wasn't as excited. I think he's more cautious than anything, while his excitement is probably there. But that's essentially what it was. I mean, a lot of the conversation between me and the owner of the empanada food truck, man and his daughter, they were very excited to be able or have the chance essentially to return to their country. They said they've been here, they work hard, they're American citizens, and they haven't been back. They haven't been back, they haven't been able to. They expressed that if they were to go back, it's not essentially allowed because they are American citizens in that country under Maduro. And so they expressed that hope of the future kind of stems towards that.
Tiana, you mentioned going back to the country. One of the things that I didn't quite realize is that one of our engineers is actually from Venezuela. And he had told me, and I talked to him about the country a couple of months ago, maybe 6 months ago. And he was telling me that he can never go back because of Maduro. So I reconnected with him again this week, and we were chatting, and I asked him, are you going to be able to go back? Are you going to go back, see your family? And he told me, no, because there are no Venezuelan embassies in the United States right now. Maduro had shut them all down. And so he can't get a passport. He'd have to go to Canada to get a passport to go back to Venezuela. So there's still a lot of, I think, unseen problems that maybe folks haven't even thought about just yet. And I want to go back to the nuance, though, because Maitane, you have already mentioned the family group chat lit up and everybody was excited. But now, 4 or 5 days later, we're asking some questions. What are some of the questions, some of the concerns that you're seeing, not just from people in your immediate vicinity, but also people back in the country?
Like I said, and I want to point out, everyone is happy that he's gone. I don't think, and back, just trying to make a point of what Tiana said, if you're not Venezuelan and you don't have any connection, it's hard to understand why these people are happy and celebrating. This man has tortured people. People are suffering in Venezuela. Lands have been stolen. It's just a big thing that if you haven't lived through it, or if you don't know someone who's lived through it, you won't understand it. So that's something that I think Tiana mentioned, these protests. Yeah, I mean, if you don't agree with what Trump did, because, internationally it's illegally, these people are ecstatic because a dictator has been captured, and they've been in a dictatorship since late 1988 when Chavez entered, or late 1989. So some of the questions, I think, most of all, are Delcy Rodriguez, vice president for Maduro, basically right-hand man, right-hand woman for him. She has the same ideas as him. So they're like, you captured Maduro. Why is Delcy Rodriguez now in power? Because she's going to do the same thing he's doing. And then another question is, what is Trump doing this benevolently, or is there a hidden agenda? I think one thing that people are thinking is when there's another election, like there was in 2024, that they called, the popular vote was won by Edmundo Gonzalez and Maria Corina Machado, and they won the popular vote, but Maduro was like, no, as a dictator, he took the position again. Is there going to be a fair election now that the United States is kind of involved? Also, something I've heard, not from my family members, but people that I follow on Instagram that are Venezuelans that are back home in Miami, they're kind of concerned on the oil and natural resources that Venezuela has. Venezuela is one of the largest oil reserves in the country, in the planet. And I think they're worried about how the U.S. is going to handle it. And obviously, those are questions that no one knows. Delcy Rodriguez, that's another whole ball game. But I think more people are understanding kind of why Trump has kept her in power.
Right. It's the what's next that I think a lot of people are still just, trying to figure out. What is going to happen next? One of the things that you mentioned, and both, you and Tiana both mentioned this, is that it's difficult to truly understand the situation if you're not from the country, if you haven't lived in the country. And that was one of the things that I had a conversation with, again, one of our engineers with, was, do you have any concerns about, the U.S. coming in and running the country, as Trump says? Do you have any concerns with home rule? Do you have any concerns with whether or not these actions violate the U.S. Constitution? For me, as an American, I think absolutely I have some concerns about what this means for the future of the United States and what it means for the locals in Venezuela. But he kind of shifted my mind, right? Because he said, listen, the country needs so much help and there's so much corruption rooted in the country that you can't use the American mindset to understand the situation. And that was something that sort of resonated with me. And now I'm going back, I'm like, okay, how do I process this from a different angle? Which is why you guys are here to sort of present that different angle. I'm kind of curious where we go next. Is there any way that either people from South Carolina who are Venezuelan, is there a way they go back and start making changes, or people that are currently in Venezuela, do they step up and start looking at ways to make splashes at all? Have you guys heard anything about what could potentially happen from the Venezuelan people?
Actually, Nick, I kind of want to make this point too. Sure. And from what I've heard from, people that I reported with, just to kind of support what Maitane was talking about, especially, and what you had mentioned as well. But another really big topic during my discussions was that, yes, Maduro was captured, but he's just one of the pieces. Like you guys both said already, there's a lot of other main characters in this. He's just a big piece of it. So while the people that I spoke to said that they were very happy and hopeful that Maduro was captured in this case, knowing the fact that there were other people, and I'm assuming Delcy Rodriguez was not mentioned or named, but based off of what Maitane had mentioned, I'm going to assume that she's also one of those key players here. It might be worth wondering, how do they feel right now with that other key player kind of just taking over?
Venezuela is such a prosperous country, and they were so prosperous till Chavez went into power. When Chavez went into power, Hugo Chavez, the previous dictator, my uncle and my other uncle, they both left the oil business. They were in something called PDVSA, which was one of the biggest oil companies and stuff like that. They left because Chavez was changing all of it. a country like Venezuela has been suffering for so long. That's why the damage is so deep. And the biggest thing, I think, with what our engineer was saying is the damage is so deep. And again, like Tiana said, Nicolás Maduro is one of them. But something that all the dictators have in common is the backing of the military. And that's the biggest thing. That's why Delcy Rodriguez is president. Because the only way Trump can get oil is supporting her. Because she has the support from the military and everyone else that's in power. So yeah, capturing Maduro, that's great. But that's not the solution. You need to, in order to fix Venezuela, and I don't think any person can really do this, because they already kind of made a splash, per se, when voting for the opposition. So I think what, America or other countries can step in and help is trying to change the corruption in the country, that the military they're also corrupt. A lot of the reason why the military backs Nicolás Maduro or Chavez was because they're supporting illegal businesses that are going on and they're getting more money from it. So, I think that if other countries can step up and help to try to change the corruption, maybe change the mindset of the military to back someone who's not going to corrupt the country so much. But I think as people, as residents of Venezuela, or even people who have moved here that are citizens, the only thing that they can do is make the vote and hope. Right now it was just like to vote and hope for the best. But I think that's a big misconception with a lot of Americans. They're like, well, Trump's coming in and whatever. But like, he came in, but he took, again, one of the key players who's back in office, someone who is also going to, if she had the power, she can become a dictator if she wants. It's so broken and it's so, the system is so weak and so corrupt that honestly, if Maduro, who was a bus driver, can become president of a country that has so much potential to be prosperous, anyone can become president of that country.
We did see calls last weekend, for the military to not back the government. Obviously, that hasn't happened. But we also saw that President Trump says she's going to be doing whatever America wants. I think we'll have to wait and see if that does play out. But there's still a lot left of this story to be told. Thank you guys both for your insights. Before you head out, I want to let you know about a special project that we have been working on one of our top investigative stories from last year. Join me and our investigative reporter, Emily Johnson, as we dive deep into the death of a 23-year-old woman inside the Charleston County Jail. We have never before aired interviews and new information in the still developing story of Mary Brucato. Thanks for listening, and of course, we'll see you in the next Live 5 Deep Dive.